Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show on Thursday, March 13th. NFL free agency has already been over for 4 days. Talked about a lot of big signings on Tuesday. We have some signings to talk about today, not quite as big. Some names that everyone in fantasy football knows and loves, though. Evan Engram, who's coming off a disappointing season after nearly setting the tight end single-season receptions record 2 years ago, has landed in a very tight end-friendly system in Denver. Cooper Kupp is trying to find somewhere to revive his career. Supposedly getting interest from 5 teams, including the Seahawks and Jaguars. The Cowboys remaining very unserious in their backfield. Javonte Williams, although we'll see if one of you wants to take a crack at Javonte back. I think you probably both already talked about this last Thursday. I don't remember what you said.
It wasn't good. I'm sorry.
We appreciate you listening.
We'll talk about it again today. Our guy, Rico Dowdle, he's every year there's like a few running backs. Like if you could just land somewhere where you can get touches. And then those guys always land somewhere where they can.
They're always in the Birmingham Stallions, like almost 100% of the time. The guys where I'm like, someone just give him a 2-year, $10 million deal. That guy is a future UFL champion, but nothing more. Sadly.
Rico Dowdle, now Chuba Hubbard's backup. A lot of other running backs get to Elijah Mitchell, Raheem Mostert, Kenneth Gainwell, maybe NWI, DeAndre Hopkins. A lot of names down the ballot. Maybe even Adam Thielen if we have time. Hopefully we don't have time for that one. But we apparently do have time for these two jokers, these two clowns. I want to try to dunk on Bill Belichick. Tell the folks about it, Kyle Dvorchak.
Yeah, so free agency has been, I don't want to say dead. It's a lower free agent crop. We've had a little more free time than we usually do this specific week. And I thought, like, with my free time, could I find some news that would bother Pat? Like it would be a good use of a free 20 minutes I have between blurbs. And instantly, Google search results, what would bother Pat Daugherty? Apparently, the UNC's football team's first choice, or UNC's, I guess, whole entire sports program's first choice for the football team's next head coach, which is currently Bill Belichick, was not Bill Belichick. Plan A, as is the quotes, Plan A was Arthur Smith, Seahawks offensive coordinator. He did, I believe, they either interviewed him or at least reached out to request an interview politely. I think he politely declined. Like he didn't even, I don't know if he even took the interview. And then they went to their second choice, supposed greatest NFL head coach of all time, Bill Belichick, and settled for Bill Belichick. Just the depths of despair for Belichick being the second choice of like a C-tier NCAA football program.
This was clearly an Arthur Smith leak. The real thing, he got offered to be Bill Belichick's ball boy. He almost took it. He almost actually took that job, but he turned it down. And the timing of this leak is very, very suspicious. And I think the timing has everything to do with Arthur Smith. He thought first time in his career, he might at least have a quarterback who was once good. And Aaron Rodgers, he wasn't going to get an actual good quarterback, but he thought he was getting Aaron Rodgers. And as of Thursday afternoon, he still doesn't have it. And so, he's just a leak. You might not know this, but the team wanted me over Bill Belichick.
I'm widely considered better than.
I'm widely considered better than Bill Belichick, Denny.
You are right about the source of the leak. Like, who else is leaking this? It's very clearly like Arthur Smith's he just had a rough day. Like, oh man, what a terrible day at work. Well, guess I'll let everyone know that I was UNC's first choice.
Well, the thing is with Belichick is that he later learned that like 3 NFL teams wanted him as their head coach. So he blew it. Extremely
curious. Yeah, he did blow it. Bill, talk about power plays gone awry. Like, I don't know, I might just take the UNC job. And then next thing UNC knows, they get turned down by Art Smith and they have to offer Bill Belichick. Like, oh my God.
We have to.
Oh my God. Someone tell me how to get out of this. Bill Belichick's Googling how to turn invisible. It's not possible.
And then 6 weeks later, the Raiders were like, we'll do anything for you to be our coach.
I know. And our guy, Bill, maybe another sign he's lost his magic touch, that he took the Tar Heels job at speed of light in Kyle's parlance. And when he could have had 3 to 4 NFL jobs.
Yeah, because he was literally like the power player. I mean, he was a de facto GM in the NFL on top of being a head coach. Like he was the ultimate power player, controls everything guy. And he fumbled the bag. There was no way about it. He could have immediately returned to the NFL. And instead, cannot stress enough, the third best FBS conference's third best team at best.
At best.
Yes. So Bill, because they have Bill, you can call them the third best.
Bill Belichick fumbled the bag. Really fumbled the bag was Sean Payton. He struck out on re-signing former Saint Juwan Johnson Juwan Johnson back in New Orleans, the first time ever Sean Payton has failed to land a former State in Denver. So we settled for plan B, Denny Carter, Mr. Evan Engram, who went from not being on the market to easily being the best tight end available on the market. One of the first tight ends to sign, fills a really huge need for a team that just didn't have like, quote, easy receptions last year. Like, it was kind of difficult for the Broncos, like, just get someone the ball. We know Evan Engram, we've argued at times, offers too easy of receptions.
Yeah.
Becomes something of a security blanket that is relied upon too often, Denny, but really hard to quibble with the fit of Evan Engram in Denver from a fantasy perspective.
I mean, he instantly becomes the number 2 pass catching option behind Cortland Sutton, I think. I
He
mean,
might be the number 1, too. Like,
I mean, Marvin Mims, I don't mean to say Marvin Mims is like not a thing anymore. He very much is. I wrote about him recently.
Just say it. I mean, he's not.
But he's not. Marvin Mims is never going to be like a high volume target guy. And so, I okay. Like, if you're going to twist my arm, is there a path to Evan Engram leading this team in targets? Yeah, I would say that. Only Travis Kelce and Trey McBride have more tight end receptions over the past 2 seasons than Evan Engram. And Engram, he had a
lot of time.
Yeah, and he saw a target on 27% of his routes last year, which was the 4th highest rate among tight ends. So, a guy who like gets open and for better or worse becomes a target magnet. And we've argued that for Trevor Lawrence, he probably wasn't the best development. For Bo Nix, I'm hoping it is a little different. I will say with the Juwan Johnson thing, guys, it's a little funny because clearly Mickey Loomis paid up to keep Juwan Johnson so that Sean Payton couldn't get him. And Greg Rosenthal of NFL Network actually described this as the Loomis Payton death spiral, where they just keep going after each other's guys like with reckless abandon. And Juwan Johnson,
you think you can just pay Juwan Johnson $30 million over 3 years? Guess what deal we're giving Adam Troutman, buddy?
Yeah.
I'm actually shocked. This is a very egotistical thing to say, but I'm actually shocked I didn't think of the Loomis Payton spiral. That is,
I like this a lot.
That's so up my alley because that is really, really what it is. Like,
it is.
The arms race. Like, listen, no one's ever winning a nuclear proliferation arms race. The second arms race you were never winning is like 2009 to 2018 Saints. Like, just give it up, man.
Somebody has got to pull the plug on this. This is not good for any. I would hope that Peyton could eventually do that. Look, the Saints, they're running it back with like one of the worst rosters ever. Like, okay, fine, but like Peyton's got to just step back and be like, I'm not doing this anymore, Mickey.
He absolutely does. Fantasy managers, they didn't know if we were going to be drafting Evan Engram as highly as we had the past few years in 2025 till we found his landing spot. Kyle, just off the top of your head, what feels right for Evan Engram? Tight end what heading into 2025?
11. I think I am a little more concerned. I think he could earn more targets than that. But we saw, especially last year, we saw his yards after the catch plummet. And this was the canary in the coal mine for Travis Kelce and for other players too. That's kind of the one easy comparison to draw is that once Travis Kelce stopped being able to produce after the catch, that's when we've started talking about him as like, I don't know, he's fancy Zach Ertz. And we saw that hit last year where we had a career low in yards after the catch per reception for Evan Engram. And then a team who had him at not that much of an expensive deal said like, no, thanks. We are done with this. Brenton Strange will do a completely replacement level player plus $4 million, I think, which is what they saved. That'll do for us. So we have the drop in production and then a team who didn't have to pay him all that much saying we don't want to pay him anything, then obviously choosing not to pay him anything. I think the floor is low, right? I think the floor in terms of what he can do, both for an NFL team, but in terms of fantasy purposes too. If he's not contributing anything from an NFL team perspective, they will continue to not play him at some point. He'll become a part-time player, then a 40% route rate player, and he'll continue to fall. So I think the floor is low. The reception volume in week 1, he might be the tight end 5 or 6. But in week 17, what does this depleted version of Evan Engram look like? I'm a little more concerned.
First, when you're like going in on like depleted Evan Engram, I was like, oh man, I don't know about that. Like he's still only 28. He's turning 31 in September. He is a kind of a classic, older than you would think. He only appeared in 9 games last year, but if you set the games played slider to 8, he was not in the top 12 by average PPR points per game amongst tight ends. Also more disappointing than I would have expected. And I wanted to try to like got you guys with the few like, well, Evan Engram or so on, and like there's not very many. Yeah, I'm still taking Sam Laporta easily over Evan Engram. I mean, Mark Andrews, that's a weird one. Even we'll end the conversation here. Travis Kelce or Evan Engram?
Kelce,
Easily.
Wow. All right.
I think Engram falls into that role of, especially for fantasy purposes, where we were at last year with someone like Dalton Schultz or Jake Ferguson. We're like, I'm not really sure what the talent is, mostly because those guys have never reached the heights that Evan Engram reached. But now Evan Engram is probably reaching a low point in his career. But I do think it's fair to say they're their team's number one tight end. They're a decent target earner. I just don't know what they bring to the table beyond just being a guy, frankly. The former Jag remains a Jag in some sense. So I still think he is a useful fantasy player, but do I think he has that nearly setting the receptions record type of ceiling? No. I still don't think he has that anymore.
He never had that ceiling, even when he did almost have that ceiling. That was just a total fluke.
I'm on board with this.
Speaking of low points in a career, Cooper Kupp, really, really like fruitless, futile trade attempts. It seems like 2 months with the Rams and Cooper Kupp. They finally admitted defeat on Wednesday, Denny, and released him. We're a little wary of talking about this one because we're afraid like the second we talk about Cooper Kupp, and he's signed with the Montreal Alouettes. It's not that far down, but he's been linked to a bunch. He will generate a lot of interest, even though the efficiency is declining, like the counting stats are declining. His kind of sure hands, his kind of veteran experience, you're going to get several like second or third or fourth chances. Teams, I believe the fact that there's probably at least like half a dozen teams interested in Cooper Kupp. He's been linked to the Seahawks and Jaguars officially, Denny. Do we like either of those landing spots? Do you like a third landing spot? And just where are we at? We've talked a lot about Cooper Kupp. Where are we at right now?
The Jags are the preferred landing spot because, he can work from the slot there with Christian Kirk gone.
What do they call that? The power slot? I guess that was the old Bucks offense. But I remember people talking about the power slot, and like Cooper Kupp is a Bucks trade edition target last year after Chris Godwin got hurt.
Right, and Liam Cohen, there's that connection. Cohen, obviously, a McVay guy.
That's what I was sorry for people who weren't following my thought process there.
Okay.
Thinking of Liam Cohen,
maybe,
not the Bucks.
Yeah, that's maybe what you meant. But so I would think that would be the best spot. The Seahawks makes no sense. He's too duplicative of JSN. Over the past 2 seasons, Kupp has ran a route from the slot on 66% of his routes. JSN's up there at 82%. Kupp has actually been better from the slot as far as efficiency goes. But
JSN down horrific.
Yeah, no, JSN, I know we're a little off topic here, but JSN not a wide receiver one. And
I don't know if I agree with that, but
I mean NFL. I'm saying NFL.
No, I don't know if I agree with that, but continue.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I'm with Pat here. I'd like to state my allegiance. I'm on Team Pat on this one. Continue.
I've come back every year. Like our listeners,
we got him back, baby.
Our listeners does Pat hate JSN more than any player ever, or does he like JSN? Like we can't keep this straight, and the answer is I can't either.
Well,
JSN contains multitudes. Denny, sorry.
Kupp would make no sense, I think, as an addition to the Seahawks. Let's get him to Jacksonville. Let's get it trending.
He makes no sense as an addition to the Seahawks, Denny, until you remember one really important fact. That is that they played the Los Angeles Rams twice. So Cooper Kupp's like 1.2 mil. I'll take it. That's all I care about is combining for 17 receptions for 196 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Rams and having 300 total yards the rest of the season.
Yeah, right. Playing in 4 games, 2 of which are against the Rams.
Kupp, man, can we just get anyone to a contender? Like, seriously, does anyone sign with a contender anymore? Like,
no.
Do the Bills or Chiefs ever do anything? Like,
no. And the Packers don't ever
do something. Green Bay. Someone
act like you didn't write the Josh Palmer to the Bills blurb, buddy. I don't know who wrote that blurb.
Like, someone sign somebody. And the Chiefs seriously just going to do this again? Like, seriously just going to do this again? Seriously just going to do this?
I think they are.
Can't even sign Evan Engram. We used to be a proper country.
They have 3 tight ends. What are they going to do with Engram?
Yeah, I forget. No, there's probably not any difference between Noah Gray and Evan Engram, actually. Yeah.
Very little.
One of them's good, and the other one's Evan Engram.
Any final thoughts on Cooper Kupp, or should we just wait for when he signs?
Just wait.
We are now going to what I like to call a running back corner. None of these guys are good.
No,
but, they all have new teams.
they're not.
Javonte Williams, I mean, many are saying has never been good. Even Javonte Williams, a lot of times.
It's you. It's just you.
Time out. No, it's not just me. Because now Javonte Williams gets a lot of the, before the injury. Like, guess what, buddy? Check out his stats before the injury and his efficiency before the injury. Also not good. Never been good.
Kyle,
never been good.
Look it up, Kyle.
And he's not going to be good with the Dallas
Filibuster, Denny.
Cowboys.
Filibuster. Hurry. Filibuster.
No, I mean, okay, listen. We get the feeling you can push back on the Javonte Williams, never been good. We kind of get the feeling the Cowboys, desperately want Ashton Genty. We also get the feeling Ashton Genty might not make it to number 12 overall. No. So just what kind of landing spot is this for Javonte Williams? Listen, to me, the biggest red flag for Javonte really is the injury. Yeah, it's bad. That's a very unfortunate break, but he gets a good break, and he has a running back friendly coach in Sean Payton. And just 2 years of kind of a running back maestro not being able to really figure out what to do with Javonte Williams. It was nice to see the pass catching last year, but he didn't do anything with it. How do we feel about Javonte with the Dallas Cowboys? Who wants to go first?
I'll go while Kyle's looking up some stats here to show that Javonte actually was elite and on his way to CMC territory before his injury. So, I mean, Javonte might not even be on the roster by week one. And I would bet against almost anyone competing for touches in the Dallas backfield over Javonte Williams. I have some stats here. Only Alexander Mattison and Ramondre Stevenson had a lower EPA per rush last year than Javonte. Even a guy like Travis Etienne was significantly better, and he was not good. Williams broke a tackle on less than 6% of his carries, one of the lowest rates in the league. So, it's pretty bleak. I know that he got away with it with the pass catching and the Peyton system. I don't see the same thing here. So for me, he's basically a non-factor who might not even be on the roster.
Well, we don't know. It's a $3 million deal. I have been unable to find how much of that is guaranteed. It could be under $1 million. It could be all $3 million. If $3 million is guaranteed, he will be on the roster.
Yeah,
unless he can't move in training camp. Yeah. But that is a really important number with Javonte Williams. It's not good. Even if $3 million was guaranteed, it's not great that his best offer was 1 year for $3 million, which speaks to Denny's point that listen, maybe they're cautiously optimistic about it, but they're not holding their breath. Why is this guy on the team over Rico Dowdle?
All right, rookie season 2021, first year in the NFL, top 10 in yards after contact, top 10 in PFS elusiveness rating, a solid, not great yards per route run of 1.2, not bad for running back, not anything super
pretty
special.
Bad, actually.
I was 23rd, I think, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's fine. He's capable on third down. He's not a specialist by any means, but was truly a difference maker between the tackles. And his numbers all held into the second year. He only played 3 or 4 games. Doesn't qualify for any metrics thing because then he tore every ligament in one of his knees. I mean, I think he used to be good, but we are totally aligned now on the fact that he hasn't been that player since 3 weeks in 2022, I think is what it was. 2021 was his rookie year. And he hasn't even really flashed that he can be that player. It hasn't come and gone.
It's sad. I know. He really has not. Yeah.
It's just been 2 consecutive years of him looking like a completely different player. Maybe the upside of this scenario is that we did just see Dallas squeeze a lot of production out of Rico Dowdle, who I think is fine, but he's not special. And if you get 70% of that from Javonte Williams, which maybe is possible, and you get to pay nothing for him, both for the Cowboys and for fantasy purposes, that's a really good outcome. But like we said, I don't think they're actually drafting Gianti because I think he goes before they pick. I think the Bears, if Gianti makes it there, they're very likely to take him. And that's if he makes it there, because I think the Raiders are very live to take him. So I think they're more, I think they're more of a second or third round team in terms of investment in running back. And this is a really good class to invest in the second or third round, especially for size too. We have a lot of good classes where there's some fun specialist guys, but they don't have true RB1 size. There are a ton of just big dudes who can run the football in this class. And that's kind of what this team needs, because I'm not going to say they have a number 1 running back. They have a guy who profiles as a backup in Javonte.
Yeah, Javonte, I think I always thought he was overhyped. But spending 2 seconds on his Pro Football Reference, you see 246 pretty solid rookie touches. And then, like you said, just 3 years of not getting back to that form. He is only 25, but I don't think anyone should be holding their breath for Javonte Williams. No one should be holding their breath for Ashton Genty making it to the Dallas Cowboys, though, because he's making it to the Raiders. We'll keep this one short. One reason he's probably making it to the Raiders, all they've done, a team that desperately needs to upgrade their backfield, all they did was sign Raheem Mostert, who, Denny, look, is there anything really to say other than Raheem Mostert was in about as friendly of a system as he could have possibly been in Miami the past few years, and then just looked totally cooked last year?
I mean, he's always been a Shanahan system guy. He's one of these, like, the 8 or 10 running backs who bounce between Shanny systems.
It's like there's like a dead language. There's 8 people in the world to know it.
I mean, truly, like a guy like Patrick Taylor is now one of those guys. So it's not exactly like household names, but the fact that he couldn't succeed last year in that really friendly running back friendly Shanny system in Miami, I think says that it's probably over for him. And I would be stunned if he has any sort of like real role in the Vegas backfield. Let's just be real. The Raiders are drafting Genty. Like that's all there is.
Yeah. Pete Carroll is born for this moment.
Yeah. I mean, Chip Kelly, apparently reportedly really wants. So they're drafting. We have to like mentally prepare ourselves for that.
You know what ruined Raheem Mostert's career was actually
all those knee injuries.
I was to say actually staying healthy is what ruined his career. Because then he like handle big workloads. And he declined like a normal running back.
They needed to at some point. Someone needed to step in and be like, "Hey, man, 8 touches a game tops," and they let him get to something beyond 8. I will say he, just like Devon Achane, completely plummeted last year. But do we think like Achane is really bad? I think it was largely the situation he was put in was not conducive to breaking long runs, because we think about like how the passing attack can create space for the run game. Well, if the passing attack doesn't attempt to push the ball farther than 5 yards downfield, probably not a lot of space for the run game. And it shouldn't be a surprise that both of their literally Devon Achane went from the most efficient running back, not only in the league, but one of the most efficient seasons ever, to like the least efficient running back in the NFL. Maybe that's how you spin this as a Raheem Mostert. If you scale him back to a 5 to 10 touch kind of guy, maybe he can reclaim some of that explosiveness, because it wasn't just him who fell off, albeit the fact that he fell off at his age makes it more of a systemic concern for his personal profile.
I wanted to note quickly, Miami, according to Pro Football Focus, had the 4th worst run blocking offensive line last year. So I think Kyle's onto something.
Raheem Mostert did nothing wrong.
He did nothing
to these 2 guys. He did everything wrong to me. I'll not be drafting him. I would be wrong not to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. All eyes will be on Scotty Scheffler as he aims for a 3rd Players' Championship in a row, something no other PGA Tour golfer has ever accomplished. Watch the final rounds this weekend on NBC and Peacock. They ever going to get this live PGA thing taken care of, by the way?
Yeah, they're looking into that.
Our guy Brooks Koepka looking more defeated than any human being I've ever seen speaking in press conferences.
He wants to come back. Yeah, I will say this course is eating these guys alive today. Lots of chipping into the water, which you don't see very much.
You don't? Wow. Yeah. Well, I've never seen that. That's because I've never been on a golf course, but it's one reason I've never seen it. One reason you'll never see Rico Dowdle again is because he's now behind Chuba Hubbard. Wow. And on a team that has Jonathan Brooks, a former 2nd-round pick, but a lot of implications from this move, and pretty much none of them are good. For Rico Dowdle, it's just total career backup season. For Jonathan Brooks, when you see a guy get $6 million to be a backup, not exactly a good indicator for the future of your career as you come back from another traumatic lower body injury. Is this drop territory for Jonathan Brooks in Dynasty? And Rico Dowdle, dream dead, despite getting twice as much money as his replacement in Dallas.
I mean, he'll be a target of mine in 0 RB drafting. He's a contingency RB2 who is going to take over the RB1 role easily if and when Chuba Hubbard misses time. Now, I think for Brooks, it probably means the team is hedging big time and saying like he's probably not going to play, and if he does, he's going to be very limited this year. So I don't know, dynasty wise, you can't get anything for him anymore. So maybe just cut bait. But I mean, Dowdle is like a workman-like running back, and he can function. He can be fantasy viable if you give him enough touches, like we saw last year.
Kyle, thoughts on Panthers backfield.
Yeah, I actually think this is. I mean, I think he's better than, and it's not $6.5 million. It's so incentive laden. It's a base of 3 with up to 6.5. Which, if he's a backup, he's probably not even seeing a ton of that money because he's not going to have a chance to hit his incentives unless they're really low, which doesn't seem like they would be. But with that being said, the situation itself, frankly, is probably as good as we could hope for, knowing that we were never going to get him signing for a similar role as to what he had last year. Like, it was just a pipe dream and it wasn't going to happen.
Would you rather have him back in Dallas than this?
Oh, of course I'd rather have him back in Dallas. But they didn't seem that interested in bringing him back. So I had sort of written off, I think I even said this last week, where like, he is a guy who I think he's good. And I think I'm right about that. I don't think I'm just blowing smoke. I actually do think he's a good running back. But I was pretty cognizant that the NFL didn't seem to feel that he was a starting caliber player. That ultimately bore out. But as Denny pointed out, what would be their other option if they don't add via the draft, which, given how much they've invested in running back in Chuba's extension and the Jonathan Brooks second-round draft capital, I don't think they're live to add a running back until maybe the 5th, 6th, or 7th rounds, which isn't that big of a deal. This does seem like a good contingency spot where the other guy, if he's even still on the roster, is like kick returner Raheem Blackshear, right? They don't have another running back. Especially because I don't even know if Jonathan Brooks plays a snap in 2025. This was a month or 2 old at this point, though it's not like the prognosis is going to change much, but it was the Athletics' Joe Person saying that he's unclear if Brooks will even play in 2025, local report.
Or ever again. I mean, he's going to be through 2 years of his career with 12 touches. Not very many players come back from that.
And it's not just one injury, too. He tore the same ACL that he tore in college right before coming into the NFL. So totally, his future is just entirely up in the air. So as far as backups who could, if things break in their favor, see a bunch of touches, I think Rico fits that mold quite well, and we know he can handle it because he did it last year.
Would have felt good about Rico in Denver, by the way. There are a lot of places I would have felt good about.
I would have liked that too.
But yeah, Cuba is fairly durable, but he takes so many carries that he does kind of he gets banged up a lot. So I guess not the worst spot for
Hubbard is like barely better than Dowdle, but I don't say that to say that Dowdle has a chance to usurp him. I don't think he does, because the Panthers, man, they love a Chuba.
They do. They love Chuba more than life itself. Like, they had instant regret about the Jonathan Brooks pick. Like hold on, we'll extend you, Chuba. Like, we're sorry.
I mean, it was a major extension. Yeah,
they gave him an apology extension for drafting Jonathan Brooks. We owe Elijah Mitchell, and no, we don't owe Elijah Mitchell an apology at all. He could have played 68 games in San Francisco, and he appeared in 27 of them.
Wow.
I double-checked that number because that had to be wrong, and it is not wrong, man. And did you even count? Did you count playoff games?
I did not count playoff games, so he's missed more than just even the 41, I believe, he's missed. That includes 0 appearances last year. All that being said, he lands in an interesting place, a Chiefs backfield that is totally bereft right now. Kareem Hunt was just running on fumes. That's just bereft. I guess it all depends on how Isaiah Pacheco clearly did not have his strength regained from his broken leg when he rushed back last year. A player was on the spot. Totally bereft was overselling it, Denny. But do we feel any excitement about Elijah Mitchell, who was targeted like pretty early in free agency by the Chiefs? Or is it just a guy like, oh man, he's missed 41 games? Like, I guess we'll talk about it like if he plays.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's how I feel. The Pacheco thing reminded me sort of Tony Pollard from a couple of years ago, where, you know, you come back from a broken leg and you don't have the juice, and you were just sitting there wondering why. Like, why are you playing? Like, what is the point of all this? Even when Pacheco broke into the open field a few times late in the season, he couldn't pull away at all. And in fact, it kind of looked like he was just kind of dragging his leg along, like J.K. Dobbins back a couple of years ago. Anyway, so if Pacheco is back to full health, then I guess this is a moot point, because I would think that Pacheco would be, you know, the every down back or something close to it. Elijah Mitchell for me is just a zero interest because of the injuries. And because even if he's healthy, what is the upside? He gets 6 touches a game. I don't know.
Or, I mean, to say he does get 22 touches, does he just get hurt again immediately?
There's zero chance that he can maintain at a major workload now.
The Chiefs strike me too, Kyle, as kind of like adding another back in the draft type of team. And I don't know if the book is entirely closed here. Any best ball bro? Is there going to be a best ball bro case for Elijah Mitchell? Or is this everyone kind of on the same page here? Like, I don't know, man. I liked him 3 years ago, and that was 3 injuries ago. Like, is anyone even going to bother to make a case for this guy?
I mean, it sort of reminds me, I mean, Denny already kind of made this connection, but to how we were feeling about J.K. Dobbins going into last year, where I think his contract had $50,000 guaranteed. Like that's less than a game check for highly paid players, right? And he had been coming off of years and years and years of season-ending injuries. And it was like, personally, I had no faith that he would. I didn't even think he would make the roster, frankly, because of how little he was guaranteed and because how little his health had been in his favor for years. But things broke his way. And the one thing that maybe makes it different is he was very familiar with the system because it was the Harbaugh whole, one of them, all of them. All of them.
The other guy, you're trying to think of the Greg Roman.
It wasn't even Greg Roman, though, because it was also coaching staff and players that also came in. And I believe the GM is a former Raven as well. So it's this entire ecosystem, I guess is what I'm looking for. It's a Harbaugh ecosystem. And they also fed staff members and players back and forth between college and the NFL as well. So Dobbins was very familiar with not only the offense, but just the entire system that is the Harbaugh system. Essentially, you don't have that organizational buy-in with Eli Mitchell, but I mean, what, $2.5 million or whatever it is? It's not nothing. It was
a little more than I expected.
Yeah. It's a real tryout plus in training camp. He's probably better than 50 to make the roster. That feels right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
By the way, you mentioned 50,000 guaranteed for J.K. Dobbins. That's what Denny spends in monthly deck maintenance. That's monthly.
Hey, it's like having a boat. You buy the thing, you have to keep it up.
So we'll see. I would not be shocked if the Chiefs add another running back in the draft.
Yeah, that's the hurdle for him. And that's why I think if there is hype, it comes much like it did for J.K. Dobbins into training camp when we know that even if the 5th round rookie that they add, like that guy could usurp him. For the Chargers, it was Kamani Vidal, and there was no camp buzz around Vidal. And Dobbins was looking good and looking like he was going to make the roster. I think if there is any, quote, hype for Eli Mitchell, it will not happen until quite literally August.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. So, yeah, to be determined on Elijah Mitchell, who we will still somehow talk about 6 times before then. Kenneth Gainwell to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is this one that we low-key care about or high-key do not care about? I really can't decide. Kenneth Gainwell got Denny, a guy in Philadelphia, just until they got Saquon Barkley, there's a hear me out. Every most important touch goes to Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah, they really love doing that.
Why don't we play him on like non-important situations? No, that's not how it works. You can't ever play in regular situations.
The highest leverage possible.
He's not good in those ones. No, he's a high importance specialist.
Yeah. So do we care about this? Weird, a backfield destined to remain weird in Pittsburgh, apparently, because I've been saying duplicative lately. Denny said it earlier. Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell don't strike me as that different of players. Denny, how do we feel about Kenneth Gainwell in Pittsburgh?
It is a little weird. Like we're going to do like a committee of 3rd down backs, I guess, in Pittsburgh. Very unlike Tomlin and Arthur Smith. Like, both of those guys are big into like the huge backs, like Najee Harris. So, maybe they will take one in the NFL draft. We'll see. I'm not disinterested in Gainwell, if that makes any sense. I'm not like all in or anything. I actually think probably Jalen Warren, because he disappointed fantasy drafters so much last year, could probably be kind of a steal, depending on how he's discussed by the coaching staff this spring. So I think that the Gainwell signing could actually ding Warren even more in the eyes of fantasy managers. I'm good with that.
Or, I don't know, Kyle, does it actually help the Warren? To me, you could look at it like, they only signed Kenneth Gainwell. This guy's like a born role player, rocket ship mode for Jalen Warren. Are we going to get Jalen Warren rocket ship mode, or we gotten burned there a few too many times?
Yeah, the idea you're setting up is one that I generally agree with, is like a blocker. Like Zeke Elliott was a perfect blocker for the Cowboys bringing in a second player. Because you can't have Rico Dowdle competing with a 2nd or 3rd round pick last year. That guy's probably beating him out. There aren't a ton of players I was confident Rico Dowdle was better than. Zeke was one of them. And we have that in like Jalen Warren. Like Jalen Warren has been a career role player plus, and he's been really good in that, but they've seemed very reluctant to give him more of that work. Who can he dominate touches over? Kenneth Gainwell is one of those players, albeit I think this team is a lock to add a big back via the draft. There are like I said, there are like true size backs, like a Quishon Judkins, Caleb
I've heard
Johnson.
running backs like have weight again.
Dude, they have big time weight again.
Running backs were weighed 130 pounds the past 5 years. Now they're back up to 220.
They're all big now. It's a class of guys who can truly handle touches, and I ultimately think that's what we're heading for. I think Warren has been typecast into this role to the point where I think he can do more, and he has the size to do. He's only 5'8", he's 215 pounds. He is thick with 2 C's, but I think this is a Caleb Johnson spot, a Quishon Judkins spot for one of these like big bruiser backs that keep Jaylen Warren in a complement role, but they don't allow him to ascend.
Judkins seems like a born Steeler. It's really the only thing I know about him. Like literally the only thing I know about him.
I actually, after Kyle's bit there, I feel like it's guaranteed.
It is guaranteed. It's also guaranteed. We'll take a short break and be right back after this. This summer is your chance to catch the Premier League in the United States of America. Manchester United, Bournemouth, Everton, and West Ham take the pitch across the country. For more information and to purchase tickets, visit premierleague.com/summer series. Man U announcing they're replacing Old Trafford. Make it there while you still can. I've been there. It's the cathedral of global sport. Very sad that it's going away. I thought it'd be really controversial, but it doesn't even seem controversial. They seem happy about it because they're feeling very anxious about falling so far behind Man City.
So a little self-conscious about that?
Yeah, right now, whatever. Tear down the old stadium if it gives us new revenue streams. We don't care anymore. A lot of people would be tempted to say we don't care anymore about Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. The 9 touchdowns last year were a fluke. I like the landing spot with the Dolphins, though. The thing is, I just don't know if it means anything for fantasy football. The Dolphins is a weird, like, micro point I've harped on for years. It's like the Dolphins so badly need a number 3 receiver. Like, I know they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but like they're getting like this horrific reps from everyone else who was not Tyreek and Jalen Waddle at wide receiver, and I just didn't understand it. And NWI strikes me too. He's like, talk about not duplicative, a totally different player than Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And it seems like a really shrewd, savvy signing for Miami. But I just have no idea if it matters in fantasy, and it probably doesn't, right, guys?
It does.
Yeah, it means nothing for fantasy. I also agree. I think this is a great signing. We just watched Josh Palmer get 3 years, $36 million. You cannot tell me that he is what was the NWI deal, like 2 for 7 or something like that, 2 for 6.5, I believe.
I don't remember.
You cannot tell me Josh Palmer is $30 million better than Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. There is no difference between these two players. And if I had to pick one, I might just pick Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. He plays more in special teams. He's a better blocker. Like
he's got a nose for the end zone too.
And he scored 9 freaking touchdowns, even if, yes, that is absolutely a fluke. So again, I think this means nothing for fantasy because I think the biggest reason that the wide receiver 3 has never gotten work is because it's like, how can you get work when you are competing with 2 hyper talented receivers? But I do think this is an upgrade for wide receiver 3, especially for the blocking purposes, which like that will be have utility. It means nothing for fantasy. I think it'll be good for the running backs. Now, Jalen Wright and Devon Achane instead of Raheem Mostert. You don't need to draft NWI and even 20 plus round best ball spots.
Yeah, no, you don't.
But like, I agree. This was a good value signing from a team that needs good value signings because they have a lot of holes to fill.
The Dolphins never make good value signings, Denny.
You also have, beyond Waddle and Hill, you have Jonnu Smith, who commands targets at a really high rate. So
Achane commands targets at one of the highest rates for running back in like recent memory.
Yeah, so I don't really know where these looks are supposed to come from. I did see that Westbrook-Ikhine is a decent blocking receiver. So, if your league awards points for blocks, you're all in.
Well, the Shanny system loves blocking. They also do. I feel like they need a red zone target, and maybe they believe in the 9 touchdowns. It's like
I feel like those weren't a ton of red zone targets though. They were always randomly 40 yards.
Yeah, that is true. I feel like everyone wants the Dolphins get in the red zone. That's where like everyone being a yak guy isn't good.
I can see that.
Is there any large?
Can you please have a 220 pounder? I guess like Jonnu kind of is that for them now, but for a tight end, he's not actually that big. He's short, he's thick, but he's short.
He's a rolling ball of butcher knives, but he's not like a jump ball guy, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Real quick. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine graded by Pro Football Focus as the 4th best pass blocking receiver last year.
Yeah, man.
And
couldn't be me. If I'm in the NFL, I'm not making my niche blocking.
Yeah, and then he was top 12 in run blocking.
DeAndre Hopkins, not top 12 in anything last year, except for maybe worst ever Super Bowl drops.
No,
the DeAndre Hopkins Super Bowl drop is one of the classic, like, awful plays that won't be remembered since the game was already over, but one of the worst plays I've ever seen in the Super Bowl.
Unfortunately, it's not even the worst Chiefs Super Bowl drop of the past 5 years.
No, it's not.
Yet it is one of the 12 worst drops in the Super Bowl.
I feel like we've already talked about DeAndre Hopkins recently, but Kyle, I mean, anything left for DeAndre? It was just a guy where the Chiefs needed it so bad, and when everything was on the line, they stopped even targeting him. And then I guess maybe we kind of saw why in the Super Bowl. He has like a rugged receiver. I feel like he fits the Ravens. It was like a guy they didn't quite have last year, but another guy where it doesn't seem like if there's any sort of revival, it's not going to be in fantasy, is how it feels for me with DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I think he has more left in the tank than like some of the free agent signings we're seeing. So it's a pretty weak crop. With the Chiefs specifically, he averaged 1.6 yards per route run. He was targeted on 22% of his routes. 1.6 is like not a particularly good number, but it's not this player is toasted. Like we saw Adam Thielen kind of come back from that range, and 22% target rate on your routes. It's solid. It's nothing special. And maybe that's what he is he can not only be a guy who goes out as a role player and earns targets and is still productive, but unlike a lot of the free agents or I guess trade candidates we've talked about, we often say like, move this guy to the slot, manufacture him look. We've said it with Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, where like their role is to be the not even focal point of the offense all the time, but on given plays be the focal point. DeAndre Hopkins, you don't have to move into the slot to play that role. You can still have your high leverage player get the easy stuff in the slot, and he can win kind of dirty work on the outside in man coverage. Last year, he was almost dead even in yards per route run versus man and zone. Like he can still beat man inside versus outside. He was almost dead even on inside outside yards per route run. He can still win outside. He did beat man coverage somewhat well for his rather weak standards. He can do dirty work for a team as far as receivers go, stuff that not everyone can win at, albeit he can't do it at the level he used to. So for fantasy purposes, I agree. It's not impossible that he experiences a revival. We saw this with Adam Thielen, but do I think it's the most likely outcome? Probably not. I think he's a better real life asset than he is a fantasy asset.
Yeah, Denny, Nuke has revived before too. He's been kind of a guy where his career seemed over a few times and he's sort of revived, but any final thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins, Denny?
Well, he's perfect for the Ravens because he's a washed veteran receiver.
What is the deal with that?
They just love it. They just can't get enough. The Ravens used 3 receivers last year at a 25% rate. So I don't know how DeAndre Hopkins is going to get on the field this year with Bateman and Flowers. I get the sense that he's just not going to be relevant for fantasy.
Well, they're just waiting on Bateman and Flowers to get hurt, like always. Too.
Sure.
That might be part of it.
Sure.
Okay, I was joking about this one on social media, but Demarcus Robinson to the 49ers, I'm already spooked by this because he was already a guy like coaching staffs loved way too much. Oh my God, like why did Kyle Shanahan sign friggin' Demarcus Robinson? He cannot wait. He absolutely cannot wait to feature this guy over his way better receivers currently on the roster. Do we think there's anything to Demarcus Robinson being a Kyle Shanahan life hack player? Or can Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk rest easy, Denny?
I mean, he's gonna pop. That's what Demarcus Robinson does. Like he pops for like 3 catches, 2 of which go for touchdowns in a game. But Juwan Jennings, like I wrote him up in that piece a couple weeks ago about target commanders. Like he really was a target hog against man and zone coverages. So I don't think that changes things. But I do understand what you're saying. Like he seems like the kind of guy where Shanny will be like, I can make this guy elite. Just watch.
Well, listen, there are players who do little things well, and then there are players. There's things that are so small, like they're not even little things. They're like microscopic things. Like coaches, they don't even talk about this stuff in public. They know we don't understand it. Like, you don't even understand. It's not about the little things.
Right.
It's about the things that even I can't see. And like, so like, well, how do you know they're important? Like that doesn't matter.
You sense them.
Yeah, that is how Demarcus Robinson is. Any thoughts on Demarcus Robinson, Kyle, or have we already said enough on Demarcus Robinson?
I'm not as concerned as you guys are. I think he'll be what Juwan Jennings was like 3 or 4 years ago, where he really is the distant number 3 receiver. But because he's only brought in on certain plays, largely because he can come in and block, he can come in and be like the chain mover type. I agree. He probably will pop for like a double touchdown game at some point.
You've already said something catastrophic, that he's the distant number 3. That means he's ahead of one of Pearsall, Ayuk, or Juwan Jennings.
Well, I'm thinking Ayuk probably not ready for week 1.
Yeah.
It's close at least.
Especially now that he and Shanny hate each other.
Yeah, they do.
It doesn't help, not at all.
No,
I don't like the fact that every time I see a picture of Shanahan and Ayuk, they're arguing.
I know, why are they always sniping at each other? like you neither one of you had to do this.
Right?
Like, why did either one of you do this?
You could have parted ways.
You could have parted ways. We'll part ways on this final note. 2 other veteran receivers. Not a lot to say, Kyle, on Adam Thielen and Mike Williams, but Adam Thielen back with Carolina. Mike Williams back with the Chargers after a 1-year, very unsuccessful sojourn with the Jets and Pittsburgh Steelers. Which guy is more likely to be like bye weeks are raging, like, oh, so-and-so is actually the wide receiver 34 this week? Is it just
Adam Thielen? He's actually good. Yeah, he's still good. And look, this is coming from someone who got wrecked by Adam Thielen 2 years ago. He's like the easiest fade to me, like 30-something-year-old receiver coming off of years of poor performance, total fade. And he just proved me wrong. And then he got better this year as well. He got over 2 yards per route run for the first time since 2018. He was good 2 years ago. He was even better last year. He just didn't play as much to rack up the counting stats. He's like a legit fantasy wide receiver 3, I think. I would just take him there. Mike Williams is a true flyer. Another guy where, like, it's early in the year. If you're doing 20-round best balls, sure, have fun with it. I'm not doing it, though.
Mike Williams, he unfortunately became like a true role player. Like, he was always kind of a role player, but he was a number 2 receiver role player, and his role was to make big plays down the field. Now he's like a package player. He's not even like an every down player. Mike Williams, he was so close. He like almost got there to like big time fantasy relevance and could just never make it quite work. Or Adam Thielen, I don't know, man. I don't know how this guy keeps chugging, but he keeps chugging.
Listen, I don't take any pleasure in saying this, but no receiver had a higher EPA per target than Adam Thielen last year.
Computer belongs in the trash. Straight in the trash. The computers, AI, are corrupting our precious machines. The data inputs keep they're feeding on each other and becoming worse and worse as the AI learns on AI written text.
This may have been an AI hallucination, to be fair.
This was an AI hallucination. You're not hallucinating that the show is over, but that we're still going real hard over at rotoworld.com, blurbing every single signing. Denny, you still updating your article, or are we kind of
Oh, yeah, man. I've updated it with everybody. Engram, Dowdle, everybody. Mac Hollins, if you want to see, check it out.
Mac Hollins, Diami Brown, Milton Williams, some guard the Robert Jones, all the good ones.
Milton Bradley. I was trying to think of other board game people. I can't. So we hope on Tuesday to have actual news for you with Aaron Rodgers, Cooper Kupp. I unfortunately will not be here on Tuesday. I will be at Disney World.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be at Disney World.
Good luck.
Which I'm acting like I don't like. It's amazing.
You love it. It's a magic.
It stinks. It's magical. You hate to see it. You absolutely hate to see it, but you hate to see the show over. For Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with you soon.